Millionaire CEO frozen when the quiet waitress reveals she speaks every language in front of him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Jack Anderson sat alone at a corner table in the upscale restaurant, his eyes glued to his phone screen. His posture was perfect, as usual, a powerful CEO who had it all: money, influence, and the respect of the business world. But tonight, he felt something was off. The restaurant's ambience, with its glittering chandeliers and hushed conversations, was supposed to be a place where he could relax after a long day of negotiations. Yet, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He tapped his fingers on the table, impatience creeping into his demeanor. As the minutes dragged on, he finally looked up from his phone. He was about to call the waiter again when he noticed her. Emily Blake, the quiet waitress who had just refilled his water glass. She wasn't one of the usual servers he'd seen during his many visits. This one had a certain calmness about her, an almost unsettling serenity that stood out in contrast to the usual hustle and bustle of the restaurant. She moved effortlessly, her black uniform hugging her slender frame as she moved between tables, a soft smile on her face. But what caught Jack's attention wasn't her appearance or her service, it was the way she spoke. When Emily approached another table, she began speaking to a customer in French. Jack, having spent years traveling and conducting business in Europe, was fluent in the language. He listened for a moment, expecting the usual stilted conversation that most waiters and waitresses had when speaking a foreign language. But there was none of that here. Emily's French was flawless, smooth, and natural. It wasn't just the accent, it was the way she carried herself, as though she belonged in the conversation. Jack froze, momentarily caught off guard. He watched her for a few more seconds, before quickly looking away. What was this? He thought. It wasn't just French. He had seen her speak in other languages to customers before. Spanish, Italian, and even German. He couldn't believe it. The waitress, this quiet, unassuming woman, seemed to be fluent in every language she spoke. How could this be? Jack's mind raced as he tried to make sense of it. He had never seen someone like her before, someone who didn't fit the typical mold of the service industry. She was clearly different, but in what way? When Emily returned to refill his water, Jack couldn't resist. He leaned forward and, with a smirk, asked, "You speak every language, don't you?" Emily paused for a moment, her blue eyes meeting his with a slight narrowing. "I do," she replied simply, her tone calm and measured. "And you're fluent in them all?" Jack pressed further, his curiosity piqued. Emily smiled, but there was something in her expression that hinted at a deeper story. "I learned them over time," she said, before adding. "But that's not why I'm here." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "So, why are you here?" he asked, his voice softer now, as if the conversation had taken a more personal turn. "I'm here because I enjoy it," Emily replied. "But I used to be more than just a waitress." Jack's interest deepened. He couldn't help but wonder what had led this woman, this seemingly ordinary waitress, to possess such extraordinary talents. It was clear there was more to her than met the eye. She wasn't just some employee who served food. She was someone who had a life, a history, and a story of her own. And for the first time in a long while, Jack found himself wanting to know more. Jack sat back in his chair, trying to process the conversation that had just unfolded. He had come to the restaurant expecting a simple dinner, a brief moment of relaxation, but now, his mind was spinning with questions about Emily. She wasn't just a waitress. She was something more, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He watched her as she moved gracefully between tables, her quiet presence now feeling almost mysterious. As the evening progressed, Jack's thoughts drifted back to their conversation. She had been so calm, so unaffected, as if speaking multiple languages was no big deal. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized just how extraordinary it was. He had spent years traveling the world, negotiating with the most powerful people, and yet here was a young woman, working as a waitress, who could speak more languages than he could ever dream of mastering. Jack's mind wandered to the question he hadn't asked yet. the one that nagged at him. Why was she here? Why was someone with such impressive skills stuck in a job most people would dismiss as menial? What had brought her to this point in her life? His curiosity got the best of him. He stood up and walked over to the bar, where Emily was preparing drinks for another table. He hesitated for a moment, watching her work. There was something about her demeanor, the way she moved with quiet confidence, that made him feel as if she were someone he needed to understand. After a brief pause, he approached her. "Emily," he began, his voice soft. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier. You mentioned you used to be more than just a waitress. What do you mean by that?" Emily didn't flinch. She set down the drink she was holding and turned to face him. Her expression was neutral, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps a hint of vulnerability, maybe a shadow of a past she wasn't ready to share. "It's complicated," she said, her voice steady, though there was a slight tension in her words. "I used to be involved in something different, something that felt like it had more purpose. But life has a way of changing things, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices." Jack was intrigued, but he could tell that she wasn't ready to elaborate. "What kind of sacrifices?" he asked, his tone gentle but persistent. Emily's gaze shifted away from him for a brief moment, and when she spoke again, her words were quieter, almost as if she were talking to herself. "I had to leave behind my dreams for a while. Take care of things I couldn't ignore." Jack felt a pang of empathy. He didn't know exactly what she was referring to, but the sadness in her voice was undeniable. He had no idea what kind of life she had led before this, but the way she spoke suggested that whatever it was, it had shaped her into the woman standing before him now. "And now?" Jack asked, his curiosity growing by the second. Emily smiled softly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Now I'm here. I'm just trying to make it work. One day at a time." Jack didn't know what he expected her to say, but somehow, her answer made him feel both frustrated and fascinated. He was used to being in control, used to having all the answers, but Emily was a mystery he couldn't solve so easily. As the night wore on, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important about her, something more than just the way she spoke multiple languages. He had to know more. He had to understand what had brought her here, why she was still here, and what she was capable of. The night was drawing to a close, and as he paid his bill, Jack found himself lingering, hoping for another conversation, another glimpse into the life of the woman who had left him speechless. Emily didn't look at him as she gathered the last of the plates, but when she did glance up for a moment, their eyes met. Jack saw something in her gaze, something that hinted at a shared understanding, a connection that neither of them had expected. And in that brief moment, he knew that he would be back. He would find a way to talk to her again. Emily Blake was not just another waitress. She was something far more intriguing, and Jack Anderson was determined to find out what that was. As the days went by, Jack found himself returning to the restaurant more often than he ever expected. It wasn't just about the food or the ambience anymore. It was Emily. Every time he entered, he found himself looking for her, hoping to catch a glimpse of her moving between tables, her serene presence filling the space around her. There was something magnetic about her, something he couldn't quite understand. The more he watched her, the more fascinated he became. She wasn't like the other servers. While the others were busy with their routines, Emily moved with a quiet grace, always attentive, always efficient, but never drawing attention to herself. It was as if she had mastered the art of being unnoticed and noticed at the same time. Jack had never met anyone like her. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Jack found himself once again seated at his usual table, staring at his phone, but his mind wasn't on the stock market or business deals. It was on Emily. He had tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on his work, but it was no use. There was something about her that kept drawing him back. As if sensing his presence, Emily appeared at his table. She set down a glass of water with her usual quiet efficiency. "Good evening, Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice soft but confident. Jack looked up at her, momentarily surprised by the formality of her greeting. He had become accustomed to her usual calm demeanor, but there was something different in her voice tonight. "Evening, Emily," he replied, his tone matching hers. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "How's everything going?" Emily's smile was brief, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Same as usual, sir. What can I get you tonight?" Jack studied her for a moment, trying to read her, but she kept her expression neutral, as always. "I've been thinking," Jack said, his voice a little more serious than usual. About what you said the other day. About your past. You don't have to tell me if you're not ready, but I'd like to understand more. I feel like there's more to you than just being here. Emily paused, her eyes flickering with something Jack couldn't quite place. She didn't speak for a few seconds, as if weighing her words. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been through a lot in my life. More than I care to share. But I'll tell you this. I didn't end up here by accident. I chose this path because it was the only way I could move forward. I gave up a lot to get to where I am now. Jack leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What did you give up? Emily looked down for a moment, her fingers brushing the edge of the water glass before meeting his gaze again. I gave up my dreams. My future. I gave up the chance to become something else, something bigger. I chose to stay and take care of the people who needed me, and now I'm here, just making it work. Jack could see the weight in her words, the years of experience that had shaped her. It was clear that her life hadn't been easy, but there was a quiet strength in her that Jack couldn't ignore. He sat back, letting her words sink in. I don't think you're just making it work, Emily, he said quietly. You're doing something important. You're more than this place. And I want to help. Emily shook her head slightly, her eyes flashing with a mix of determination and vulnerability. I don't need your help, Mr. Anderson. I'm fine. I don't need anyone to fix me. Jack's heart tightened at her words, but he respected her refusal. He had always been used to fixing problems, to making things better, but for the first time in a long while, he found himself facing a situation he couldn't solve. I wasn't trying to fix you, he said, his voice sincere. I just want you to know that I see you. I see who you really are, not just the waitress who serves me coffee. Emily's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Jack saw a glimpse of something else in her eyes, a flicker of hope, maybe, or the weight of unspoken dreams. It was gone as quickly as it came, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he had just touched something deeper inside her. As the evening wore on, Jack sat quietly at his table, his mind racing with thoughts of Emily. There was something about her, something that made him want to know more, to understand her story. And for the first time in a long while, Jack Anderson found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about success, about power, and about what truly mattered in life. The following week, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Every time he entered the restaurant, his eyes searched for her, and even though he didn't want to admit it, a part of him hoped she would be there. He had always been in control of his life, always knew what the next move was. But Emily, she had thrown him off balance in a way he couldn't explain. The more he observed her, the more he realized how little he truly knew about the people around him. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Jack found himself in the restaurant again. This time, he didn't sit at his usual spot, but instead, he waited at the bar. Emily was behind it, mixing drinks. With the same quiet precision he had come to expect from her. She looked up when she noticed him. Mr. Anderson, she greeted him, her voice calm, as always. He smiled, but there was something different in his demeanor this time. Emily, he replied, his voice softer than usual. Can we talk? Emily hesitated for a moment, her eyes scanning his face for any sign of what he wanted. Then, she nodded and set the drink she was preparing down. Sure. What's on your mind? She walked over to where he was sitting, pulling up a stool and sitting across from him. Jack looked at her, unsure of how to start. I've been thinking a lot, he began, his words measured, about our conversations and about what you said the other night, about your dreams and the sacrifices you made. Emily's expression softened, but she didn't speak right away. You don't have to share anything you're not ready to, but I want you to know that I see you. You're not just another waitress to me, Emily. I know you're capable of more. Emily's gaze dropped to her hands, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Jack could see that she was struggling with something, but he didn't push her. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. I've never wanted anyone's pity, she said softly. I've made choices that led me here, and while it's not always easy, it's the life I've chosen. I'm not looking for anything more. Jack leaned forward, his eyes locked with hers. But what if you could have more? What if you didn't have to stay in this life, because it's the only one you think you can have? Emily's expression hardened slightly, and she shook her head. It's not that simple, she replied. I have responsibilities. People depend on me. Jack felt a pang of understanding. I get it. But that doesn't mean you have to settle for a life that isn't what you deserve. You're smart, Emily. You have the potential to do so much more than this. She sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. I've been told that before, but it's not as easy as just stepping away from everything. People like me don't get those opportunities. We don't get to just walk away from the lives we've built. Jack reached out, gently touching her hand. Maybe it's time for a change. You don't have to do it alone. I can help you. Emily's eyes widened slightly at his words, but she quickly withdrew her hand, shaking her head. I don't need your help, Mr. Anderson, she said firmly. I don't want it. I've gotten this far on my own, and I can keep going. Jack respected her strength, but he couldn't ignore the fact that there was so much more she could have if she just let herself. Okay, he said quietly, I won't push. But I want you to know that the door is always open. You don't have to stay in a place that doesn't fulfill you. You deserve more, Emily. Emily looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she smiled, a small but genuine smile that seemed to reach her eyes for the first time. Thank you, Jack. But right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. Jack nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. As Emily turned away to attend to another customer, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed a moment of vulnerability in someone who had built walls around herself for a reason. He knew she wasn't ready for what he was offering, but something told him that someday, she would be. And when that day came, he would be there, ready to help her take that next step. Until then, he would continue to watch her from a distance, knowing that there was more to Emily Blake than anyone could see at first glance. Over the next few weeks, Jack's visits to the restaurant became more frequent. He found himself drawn not only to the food, but to Emily. She had a quiet dignity about her, a grace that went unnoticed by most people, but not by him. He watched as she moved through the restaurant, effortlessly managing her tables, her attention to detail impeccable. Yet, behind that professional mask, he could sense there was more to her, something she was holding back. One evening, Jack decided it was time to push the conversation further. He had been thinking about their last talk, the way Emily had closed herself off when he offered his help. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was afraid of something that had kept her from embracing the opportunities that were right in front of her. He had to know what it was. As he entered the restaurant, he noticed that Emily was serving a large group of businessmen at the back of the room. She had a way of making people feel comfortable, even in the most awkward of situations, and Jack admired her for it. He took a seat at the bar, waiting for her to finish with her table. When she finally made her way over, Jack smiled at her. Emily, he said, his voice gentle. Can we talk again? Emily raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Of course, Mr. Anderson, she replied, her tone polite, but reserved. She set down a glass of water in front of him and took a seat across from him. What's on your mind? Jack studied her for a moment, trying to find the right words. I've been thinking a lot about you, about what you said the other night. You said you've made sacrifices, but I don't think you're the type of person who just gives up. I think there's more to your story, Emily. I want to understand what's really holding you back. Emily's gaze flickered, and for a brief moment, Jack saw a flash of something vulnerable in her eyes. But just as quickly, she masked it with a neutral expression. I've told you everything I'm willing to share, she said softly. I've made my choices, and I've accepted them. I don't need anyone's pity, and I don't need anyone's help. Jack leaned forward, his voice steady. It's not about pity, Emily. It's about seeing potential in you. I don't want you to settle for a life that doesn't fulfill you. You have so much to offer, and I believe you deserve more. Emily shook her head slowly, her expression firm. You don't understand, she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. I don't have the luxury of thinking about what I deserve. People rely on me. I can't just walk away from everything and start over. Jack felt a pang of empathy. He understood the weight of responsibility, the feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't exactly what you wanted. But he also knew that Emily was capable of more, if only she would let herself see it. I get that, Jack said quietly, but that doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. You don't have to give up on your dreams just because of the people who depend on you. You can build something for yourself, something that will give you the life you deserve, while still helping those you love. Emily's eyes softened, but there was still a trace of doubt in her expression. I don't know if that's possible, she murmured. Jack smiled, the warmth of his expression reaching his eyes. I know it is, but it's up to you to take that first step. You don't have to do it alone, Emily. You don't have to carry everything on your shoulders by yourself. For the first time in their conversation, Emily's guard seemed to lower just a little. She looked at Jack, really looked at him, as though considering his words for the first time. "What are you asking me to do, Mr. Anderson?" she asked softly. Jack's smile widened. "I'm asking you to believe in yourself. Take a chance. Let go of the fear that's holding you back. You have the potential to do more than you ever thought possible. And I'll be here to help, if you want it." Emily was silent for a long time, her gaze distant, as though she were weighing the possibilities in her mind. Finally, she met his eyes again, and there was something different in her expression, a glimmer of hope, maybe, or a quiet acceptance that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than what she had been settling for. "I'll think about it," she said softly. Jack nodded, knowing that it was all he could ask for. "That's all I'm asking," he replied. "Just think about it." As Emily returned to her duties, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he had just seen a small crack in the wall she had built around herself. He wasn't sure what the future held for her, but for the first time, he truly believed that Emily had the power to change her own life. And he was willing to help her take that first step whenever she was ready. Days passed, and Jack couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in Emily. Her once guarded demeanor was softening, and while she still kept her distance, there was a quiet shift in how she interacted with him. He saw it in the way she greeted him when he arrived, the way she moved with just a hint of ease, as though she was no longer completely closed off. She was still the same Emily, reserved, thoughtful, but now, there was a spark of something more, something Jack couldn't quite define. One afternoon, after a particularly busy lunch rush, Jack sat at the bar, waiting for Emily to finish clearing a table. He had decided that he would try again, give her a little more space, but this time, he wouldn't hold back. He had seen too much potential in her to stay silent. Emily made her way over to him, wiping her hands on her apron. "What can I get you today, Mr. Anderson?" she asked, her voice calm. But there was a slight warmth to it that hadn't been there before. Jack smiled, his gaze meeting hers. "How about a conversation, Emily?" Her eyes flickered with a mixture of surprise and curiosity, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. "A conversation?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Jack said, his tone steady but gentle. "I've been thinking about you, about everything you've said, and I think you've been holding back. I want to know more about you, about what you really want out of life. I believe in you, Emily." Emily looked down at her hands for a moment, as if considering his words. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You don't know what it's like," she began, her words hesitant. "You don't know what it's like to give everything up, to feel like you have to carry the weight of everyone's problems on your shoulders. It's not just about me anymore. It's about the people who need me." Jack leaned in slightly, his voice low and understanding. "I get it. I do. But that doesn't mean you have to lose yourself in the process. People can only rely on you if you're in a place where you can truly be there for them. You can't help anyone if you're drowning yourself." Emily's eyes met his, and for a moment, there was a flicker of vulnerability there. "I don't know if I can ever get back to that place," she whispered. Jack reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to do it all at once. I'm not asking you to change overnight. But you can start small. You can start by believing that you deserve more, that you're worth more than just this life you've been living." Emily looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she pulled her hand away and stood up. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Jack, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. I don't think I can just walk away from everything and start over." Jack stood as well, watching her closely. "I'm not asking you to walk away from everything, Emily. I'm asking you to take a step towards something better for yourself. It doesn't mean abandoning anyone. It just means giving yourself the chance to have a future beyond just surviving." She turned away from him, her back to him as she gathered some plates. "I'll think about it," she said softly, but Jack could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "That's all I can ask," he replied quietly. Jack sat back down at the bar, watching her move with practiced grace. He knew she wasn't ready yet, but he also knew that one day, she would be. One day, she would realize that she didn't have to settle for the life she had built out of necessity. She could have more, she deserved more. And when she was ready, he would be there, ready to help her take that step. Until then, he would continue to show up, continue to believe in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. As the evening wore on, Jack felt a quiet sense of hope settle in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like maybe, just maybe, Emily had the power to change her own life. And that made all the difference. Weeks went by, and Jack kept his promise to himself. He returned to the restaurant, not with the intention to push Emily further, but to quietly show his support. Each time they spoke, the conversation seemed to move a little further, and each time, Emily allowed him to see a little more of herself. It wasn't easy, and Jack knew it. He wasn't pushing her to change, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she had more to give. One evening, as the restaurant's usual hum of chatter filled the air, Jack took a seat at the bar. The moment he sat down, he noticed Emily walking toward him. She was carrying a tray, but for some reason, there was a different energy about her tonight. Her eyes met his, and she smiled, a soft smile, almost like a secret she was just beginning to share. "Evening, Mr. Anderson," she said, setting the tray down on the counter with a quiet grace. Jack smiled back, appreciating the warmth that had started to creep into her tone. "Evening, Emily," he replied, his voice steady. He had come to know her little by little, and now, he couldn't help but wonder what she was thinking. "Can I get you something to drink?" Emily asked, her professional mask still in place, but her eyes were different. There was something more open about her now, something less guarded. "How about a conversation?" Jack said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Emily paused for a moment, her brows knitting slightly, before she nodded. "Sure, I can spare a minute." She walked around the bar to stand in front of him, and they both found a moment of quiet. It was the first time in a while that Jack hadn't been in a rush, and he felt the atmosphere shift, like the world outside the restaurant had momentarily slowed down. "I've been thinking," Jack started, his voice quieter than usual, "about everything you said last time. About how you feel like you're stuck, like you don't have a choice." "I don't think you're stuck, Emily. I think you're just waiting for the right moment to take control." Emily shook her head, her smile faint. "It's not that easy, Jack. I can't just take control. I have responsibilities." Jack leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. "I understand that. But I also know that if anyone can take control of their life, it's you. You've already shown me that much. You're not the type of person who gives up easily." Emily hesitated, looking away for a moment. She seemed to be weighing his words carefully, like she was searching for something in them. "You don't know what it's like," she said softly, her voice betraying a hint of pain. "To have to keep going, to have to keep pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. I've been doing that for years. It's all I know." Jack's heart tightened at the vulnerability in her voice, but he didn't flinch. "I know what it's like to carry burdens, Emily. And I know what it's like to feel like there's no way out. But I also know that you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to carry it all on your own. I'm not asking you to change everything, but I'm asking you to believe that there's more for you. You deserve it." Emily was silent for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the counter as if deep in thought. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes softer, but still uncertain. "I don't know, Jack. I don't know if I can take that step. It feels risky." Jack smiled gently. "Life is risky, but sometimes, taking that step is the only way to find out what you're truly capable of." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, for the first time, she spoke with a hint of sincerity. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. Jack nodded, knowing that was all he could ask for. "That's all I'm asking," he replied. As she turned away, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of hope stirring within him. It wasn't much, but it was something. Emily was starting to open up, starting to see that there could be more for her. And he believed that, in time, she would find the courage to take that first step. Until then, he would continue to be there, quietly supporting her, waiting for the day when she was ready to take control of her own life. Weeks passed, and Jack noticed subtle changes in Emily. She was still reserved, but there was something different about her now. She no longer seemed as distant, as though the walls she had built around herself were slowly crumbling. She smiled more often when he came in, and their conversations became more frequent, though they remained brief. It was progress, and Jack could feel it. He didn't push her any further. He simply showed up, offered a kind word, and let her come to him when she was ready. One evening, Jack found himself at the bar, his usual seat, but this time, the restaurant was quieter. It was later than usual, and most of the crowd had left. Emily walked past him, carrying a tray of drinks, her usual focused expression on her face. Jack had learned to read her better over time, and he could tell she was deep in thought. She set the tray down at the bar and turned to him. "Mr. Anderson, are you waiting for someone?" she asked, her voice soft. Jack smiled, noticing the subtle change in her tone. "No, just waiting for a good conversation," he replied. Emily paused for a moment, then nodded. She had been working at the restaurant for so long that she had grown accustomed to these late hours. But tonight, something felt different. "Can I sit for a minute?" she asked, and for the first time in a while, Jack noticed a hint of hesitation in her voice. He nodded, gesturing to the seat beside him. "Of course," he said gently. Emily sat down, her posture still professional, but with a slight tension in her shoulders, like she wasn't entirely sure if this was the right moment to open up. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The quiet was comfortable, yet Jack could sense that she was on the edge of saying something. Finally, she broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said," Emily began, her voice quieter than usual. "About taking a chance, about doing something more. It's harder than I thought." Jack didn't interrupt. He simply listened. "I've spent so much of my life just getting by, taking care of others, making sure everything works. I've built my life around other people's needs, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to think about my own." Emily paused, her eyes flickering toward the bar, as if trying to find the right words. "I didn't want to admit it, but maybe I am afraid. Afraid that if I step out of this life, everything I've worked for will fall apart. That if I let myself hope for something more, I'll be disappointed." Jack felt a pang of sympathy. He knew that fear all too well. "I understand," he said quietly. "But you don't have to do it alone, Emily. You don't have to carry all that weight by yourself. It's okay to take a chance. It's okay to let go of the past, to embrace a future that's yours, not just one that's based on what you think others expect of you." Emily turned to him, her gaze meeting his for a moment. There was something raw and honest in her eyes that Jack hadn't seen before. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Jack reached out, placing a hand gently on hers. "You don't have to know all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time. You've already started. You've already made the decision to believe in yourself." Emily exhaled slowly, and Jack saw the weight in her shoulders lift, even if only slightly. "Maybe," she said, her voice filled with a quiet hope. "Maybe I'll take that first step." Jack smiled, his heart lightened by her words. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here," he said softly. Emily nodded, a small, genuine smile crossing her face. "Thank you, Jack," she said, her voice steady. Jack felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had helped her, even if just a little. He knew there was still a long way to go, but the fact that Emily was opening up, that she was beginning to believe in herself again, was a victory. And for the first time, he truly believed that Emily would find her way. She wasn't alone anymore. She had taken that first step, and Jack would be there, supporting her every step of the way. Months passed, and with each passing day, Emily's transformation became more apparent. She had begun taking small steps, trusting herself more, allowing herself to be seen. She was still working at the restaurant, but there was a new light in her eyes, a confidence that hadn't been there before. She smiled more, spoke more freely, and most importantly, she began to believe in the possibility of something more. Jack had kept his word. He remained supportive but never pushed her. He was there whenever she needed someone to talk to, but he never assumed he had all the answers for her. It was her journey, and he respected that. One afternoon, as the restaurant was beginning to quiet down after the lunch rush, Jack noticed Emily sitting alone at the bar. Her shift had just ended, and she seemed to be lost in thought. This time, he didn't hesitate. He walked over and sat down next to her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Emily looked up, her eyes meeting his with a warmth that hadn't been there in the beginning. "Of course," she said, her voice relaxed. "What's on your mind today?" Jack smiled, feeling a sense of ease between them. "I was just thinking about how far you've come. I'm proud of you, Emily." Her smile faded slightly, and she looked down at her hands. "It's been a long road," she admitted quietly. "But I'm getting there, one step at a time." Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "You've made incredible progress," he said. "It's not about being perfect. It's about moving forward, even when it's hard." Emily took a deep breath, her gaze distant for a moment. "I never realized how much I had been holding back. I thought I was fine, but I was just surviving. I didn't know how to live, really. Not until recently." Jack's heart softened at her honesty. It takes a lot of strength to recognize that, Emily. A lot of people never do. Emily looked at him, her eyes bright. I think I'm starting to understand what it means to live, to actually make choices that are about me, not just everyone else. It's scary, but it's also freeing. Jack smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. You're doing it, Emily. You're living. She laughed softly, a sound that felt lighter than it had before. I guess I am. And you know what? It feels good. It feels like there's hope for something more, for something better. Maybe I'm not as stuck as I thought. Jack placed his hand on the counter, his fingers tapping lightly. You're never as stuck as you think. You just need to see the possibilities. Emily paused, then turned to face him fully. I've been thinking about what you said. About taking that first step. I'm ready. I want to do more with my life. I want to build something for myself, not just for the people around me. It's time. Jack's heart raced at her words, but he didn't show it. He simply nodded, his voice steady. I'm proud of you, Emily. You've always had the strength. Now you're starting to see it too. She smiled, her expression a mixture of relief and determination. Thank you, Jack, for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. Jack met her gaze, his voice soft but sincere. I've always believed in you, Emily. You just needed to believe in yourself, too. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes shining with a new kind of certainty. I think I'm ready. Ready to see what else life has in store for me. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with pride. I have no doubt you're going to do great things, Emily. As she stood to leave, she turned to Jack, a look of gratitude in her eyes. I'll never forget what you've done for me, she said quietly. Jack watched her walk away, the weight of their conversation settling in his chest. He knew that Emily's journey was just beginning, and he was honored to be a part of it. She had taken the first step, and now there was no turning back. Emily Blake was ready to live, and nothing could stand in her way.